to give me the signal. Hey, good morning everybody and welcome to the Audit and Risk Committee. It is Monday the 17th of November 2025 for posterity. Looking around the room, I don't see anybody who hasn't completed a health and safety induction in the last 12 months. So we'll forgo the formalities there. As you know, we're on YouTube, we're being live streamed. Please remember to have your telephones on silent. And I would like to pass over to Rohario Murray for our karakia timatanga, which is the opening karakia.
Tēnā koe Steve, I tēnei wā I pōhiritia mai kia mātou, nei rā te mahino e kia koe. Thanks for welcoming us here today. Māku I whakatūwhera tō tātou nei hui I te karakia. I'll open us up with a karakia. Tūtawa mai runga, tūtawa mai raro, tūtawa mai roto, tūtawa mai waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora ki te katoa, haume hui e tāki.
Thank you, Rohario, much appreciated. There are no apologies that I can detect, and I would then like us to move through the rest of the agenda. There's no public forum, no acceptance of late items, no confidential business to be transferred into the open, unless there's any requests for us to do so. I don't detect any. And there is a change of order to the business. So for a better flow of our agenda, after 9.1, which is the status update on page 19 of our agenda, we are going to just flick the policy reviews around. We're going to do the risk management policy first, which is 9.4 on page 44. And that's going to happen before 9.3, which is the conflicts of interests policy. So our order is going to be 9.2, 9.4, 9.3. If we look now at our minutes, on page 8, are there any corrections or comments on those minutes, team? Councillor Roseboom, was there an issue with some spelling, or was that in the confidential section?
Thank you, Chair. No, I believe my Christian name's been misspelled, using an I instead of an E.
Thank you. We will get that corrected. Can I have a mover from the committee that we accept the minutes? This is a comment question. Rohario.
Yes, I think, sorry. There was, I think it's in the minutes. I'm just trying to catch up on
No, you're
what
good.
my notes are. That talks about or it might be in the report. I'm just going to make the comment now in case it's here or in the report, but there's somewhere that talks about the workshop on risk appetite, and it says that with the councillors, and just noting that I was also in attendance at that one too.
Yeah.
So I think it might come up actually later on in the report. Kia ora.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's a good point. If we can, within reference to the workshop, reference that Tangata Whenua Representative Rohario Murray was in attendance and participating in the workshop, that would be great. Thank you. Those things being said, can I have a mover for the minutes? Moved by Rohario Murray, seconded by Deputy Mayor Jen Schooler. Any discussion? No, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I do declare that carried. Any declarations of conflict of interest, team? No. Moving on to business, and we're looking at the status update on the actions from prior to audit and risk committee meetings. Catherine Sharplin, are you going to lead us through that?
Yes, I can do.
Thank you.
So just going through from the action register, since the last report, 11 have been closed, 2 remain in progress, 6 have been identified as pending, which often means they're kind of in progress but still waiting for something, and 1 has yet to be actioned. So the table below that kind of identifies that most of them on that first page are closed except the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Quarterly Report, and both quarterly reports. more detail on unplanned turnover and provide the dates for upcoming Mighty and Pulse surveys, and they are going to be included in those future reports. Do you want me to go through those, or are you just...
No, I think that's really,
Okay.
that's sufficient. Team, any questions of the report? No? Any comments before we move to the formal part? Deputy Mayor Jen Schooler.
So I just again, trying to make the action schedule as useful as possible. When we do close actions and we talk about it was closed because we had a workshop, it'd be really good. It says that the depreciation workshop has been scheduled for a certain date. If it was had, then let's actually put the workshop, and so that we know that that's where we go to Instella to get the notes for that. So both the workshop on depreciation and insurance would be good to have there as going forward, just as comments, please.
Thank you, and I would simply note that I think action schedules are one of the best things since sliced bread about the 2024 to 2028 council.
I'm just going to make, please, another comment on 8.3, a fleet update, and that was from February, so we're now in November, and it said fleet will be covered in future reviews in progress. I think, Marty, we've had I think Paul, before he left, there was a fleet report. I actually did try to go and find it and I couldn't, and then I saw this and I went, oh, maybe we didn't have it, but I'm pretty sure something's been done, so can we just progress that action a little bit faster? Because I think we had a question on what our fleet costs before and after City Ops. We then had a question from somebody who came and did a tour who lives in Devonport Towers. She sees all the cars there and doesn't think any of them move, and I think you said, well, actually they do go in and out, and when I park my bike I notice they do go in and out, but I don't know how often, so it would just be sensible to know that whole thing of what our fleet costs are and how we manage that, and I guess just an awareness. When I'm around the city and you see TCC cars, are they only on business? Do we have people that take them home when they're stopped on the side of the road? Are they taking a call? Just to understand what we use fleet vehicles for, I think you suggested that was all going to be in the report, and maybe it already is. So if we could just progress that to get a report for us, please.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we'll track down all the information that we've provided or assembled and see whether or not it covers all of that. If not, we can tidy that up.
Rahari or Murray?
Kia ora, just echoing Jen's point around actions that are pending and when workshops have happened. So I picked up on the same point around, I think it's it's on page 22 anyway, there's about 4 of them there, and they might still be pending, but it's just the way that it reads is that the workshop is about to happen, so it just needs to be slightly amended or closed if it is finished. Kia ora.
Okay, any other comments before we formally receive? No? Can I have a mover for receiving the status update on actions from prior Audit and Risk Committee meetings? Moved by Deputy Mayor Jen Schooler, seconded by Rahari or Murray. Any discussion? No, I will then put it. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare that carried. Let's move now to 9.2, which is the Risk Appetite Report on page 23 for those following along at home. And we have our 2 Chris's to report to us on our risk appetite following the workshop. Do you want to give a brief summary of the workshop and what's brought us to this point in the decision today? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, following the work done to date, which included the aforementioned workshop in August, the outcome of that work so far is a series of preliminary risk appetite levels against each of our 13 risk consequence categories. primary purpose of this report is to present a series of draft risk appetite statements for the committee to consider and endorse, which would then go to full council for adoption by resolution. To help with that exercise, we have included 2 further pieces of work. One is the overlay of those preliminary benchmarks against the current corporate risk register, which was a desktop exercise to give an indication of current risks against the preliminary appetite. And we've also undertaken a benchmarking exercise against other councils in New Zealand. So with that background, happy to take any questions on the report. Sorry, I should also just point out there is a minor drafting error on the recommendation, which is recommendation B should read attachment 1 rather than attachment 2.
Fantastic, thank you. Any questions, team? Rohari or Murray?
Kia ora,
Thank
I
you.
suppose I'll kick it
Yeah,
off.
go for it.
Firstly, thanks for the report, team, and the significant work that underpins these preliminary risk appetite framework. I know that it's taken a lot to get us to this point, and I think that we've got a little bit of a way to go yet. I think there's a few areas of concern that I believe need further work before we can endorse the statements, and it really picked up on the several key risks in your report, namely finance, technology, and health and safety, which are currently assessed as exceeding our preliminary appetite. So the wording that you've used in your report, and I had a read through the details as well, is that if we endorse them today, we may not actually be ready to to progress with them there, or there'll need to be a lot of work done coming up. So it'll be really good to understand what plan there is if we are in a position to endorse that today. Secondly, if I could just give the second point, the environmental risk appetite is not, in my view, aligned with either our strategic direction or tangata whenua values. I think the draft statements suggest a moderate appetite and a tolerance for some environmental risk. But then I also had a quick look at our climate risk plan that the council has, but also our values that we have here. So that's the Climate Action and Investment Plan, and our strategic communities outcome, which says we value, protect and enhance our environment. And so that, for me, would lean us more towards a low risk appetite when it comes to environment. So I think before these appetite statements are finalised, I think we need a bit more time for refinement and alignment with our environmental strategy and also the views of tangata whenua. So I'll just leave those comments, questions there for your response. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Rohario, and thank you for the question. Firstly, we understand this is a journey, and I'll draw your attention to the recommendations, particularly C, which is about starting a 12-month reporting cycle based on these preliminary positions to further define tolerance levels and consequences. So it very much is a journey of discovery as we apply a preliminary position in the first instance to the current register. So that's the intention, if that is the will of the Audit and Risk Committee. And in second part to the environmental statement, what we've actually said in the words, which are just words for your consideration, is around allows some environmental risk in pursuit of objectives only if impacts are minor and reversible. No tolerance for significant or irreversible environmental harm. So these are just a few more words that would perhaps flesh out a little bit more of the position that you might like to take in the future. Kia ora.
Question from me, just in regard to that 12-month period of further refinement. What does that look like? Because, of course, moving from, say, moderate to low or moderate to high is a big shift. So what does refinement look like over 12 months?
Kia ora, thank you. So refinement looks about applying these positions to the risk registers, understanding what falls out of appetite, what then is our mitigations that need to bring them within appetite, and bringing these to you for a discussion about whether or not we have got these settings correct based on the objectives and the strategies of council. So I don't have an absolute for you right now because we need to apply these to the register, hence a 12-month program. Not saying that this is our final position, but this is a journey over the next 12 months to understand what that might look like and to further define what changing something from moderate to low would look like.
Question from me to Rohari or Murray. Does that answer give you some comfort in terms of adopting today, or are you uncomfortable at present and have another suggested way forward? What are your thoughts?
Kia ora, Councillor Morris. Overall, thank you for the response and the plan going forward. It does sound quite a good plan. When it comes to the environmental element though, I would, at least in terms of comfort, I'd be more comfortable if we started off at low and then after 12 months, if it shows we need to move to moderate, then we go that way. But again, I know that there's been a lot of work, surveys, workshops done, and if I'm wrong on this, then kei te pai, but I want to make that point clear because we really should be at the lower end, especially given where we are in Tauranga Moana and how we're prone to a lot of climate change and environmental risk here. Kia ora.
Just before I canvass the opinion of my colleagues, what would practically over the next 12 months a shift from moderate to low look like in terms of not consequences from a risk perspective, but consequences from how we manage the risk? If that's at all clear.
Fundamentally, what we would look to do is to amend the reporting to this committee so that we're reporting more by exception rather than the detail of the full register. So the committee could focus more on understanding where those risks are out of appetite currently and the proposed actions by the risk owners, and have those detailed conversations as to whether or not that is deemed to be enough action to address the risk.
Just to cover off this issue that Rohari has raised, just canvassing my colleagues, is there a level of comfort about going from moderate to low or otherwise? Deputy Mayor Schooler, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I think Rohari raises a concern I also had. So to me, we're in my understanding is elected members haven't previously had a risk appetite, so this is quite new. I think it's really good that we have one. I wonder if we endorsed a draft risk appetite statement now and used the next 12 months to have examples to come to us that we could say, okay, so we had flooding in a neighbourhood and it caused some concern in a playground. The risk appetite, the draft risk appetite said that this is how you would react. Is that still correct? Would that be, from staff perspective, if we endorsed as draft, but knowing that we are going to question it for the next 12 months, is that an option?
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. Absolutely, and that was the intention of having recommendation C, so that we adopt as a preliminary position, because things change, and so these are, it's cyclical. So that would be a great outcome.
Because I think we also, there was comment amongst us that the survey we did were pretty out there events, and I don't, and even your comment that we would just get the exceptions. I don't want to just get the exceptions, because sometimes getting 5 non-exceptions makes you realise that we're accepting those as acceptances, but they're actually, to us, they shouldn't be just accepted. And I think environment is one that may well fit into that camp. So I would much rather know that we are getting regular reporting of normal and different risks, that we can say, okay, get your view on how you would interpret the draft risk statements, but have the ability to question whether that interpretation is actually what meets our intention in the first place, and whether we also bring in the draft bringing sustainability and environment down to low. I'm quite comfortable we have that conversation as well.
Mayor Mahe.
Yeah, I guess I probably have a slightly opposing view, and that is around specifically the environmental stuff. I think that covers it very well, and the comment is, for example, we currently have an abatement notice issued to us. So under a low risk appetite, that we're not actually within our risk parameters. And if you actually look at the financial impact of mitigating that, we're not going to have any of those. But in all these cases, I think the wording is very good, that we'll only accept if it's effectively reversible. So if it's catastrophic and unreversible and damages our environment, then we're not accepting that kind of risk. But it's just trying to get that balance. And I think there's a similar sort of comment around the health and safety. And to Jen's point is probably the scenario we got given was quite a severe scenario, and therefore we weren't potentially prepared to take that risk. But we don't, that low appetite is measurable. We don't want to see any serious harm, injuries to any of our staff. But that doesn't mean we don't want to see any risk at all within that environment. So I think it's a balance, and I think the wording for me, I guess addresses a lot of Rohario's concern. But secondly, I think this is new, and again, to the Deputy Mayor's point, is we want these things to come to us so we can actually see the different options and what those risks are, so we can actually make those decisions. Because having something on paper doesn't necessarily mean it's how you put it in practice, which really is important. So I think that would be a really good exercise over the next 12 months, that we can actually do it from a practical perspective and see the different options and make those conscious choices.
Okay, we have differing views in the committee. Are there any guidance from our other colleagues attending today? Councillor Crowler.
Strongly support Rohario's comments. I think I'd be interested in staff feedback on 3 things. One is one of them is feedback from my colleagues, more probably, which is, I see the risk needs to reflect the community's appetite for risk. Like, it's all very well for us to have personal views, but we've got evidence here, and I'm looking at the vital signs work, which says the number one thing people want preserved and protected is our green space, and then our water, and then Māori culture third. So 41% of people, were deeply concerned about that, which was a very high mark. The same amount actually as we're concerned about traffic congestion and so forth, which has an environmental impact as well on the other side. So interested in sort of where are we going to try and figure out this risk? Because I think rather than going to my head, we should go to the evidence. But second thing for the staff is we haven't separated out climate change from environment. I think when you look at risk, there are 2 different kind of risk profiles. One of them is, do you want, say, some oil polluting the Moana? If you ask most people around here, they don't want the harbour to have a moderate risk of having an oil spill. or something like that. They would want a low. I'm pretty convinced that if you went around the public, that's their view. They do not want any significant risk there. And then the third thing is that we seem to have defined our environmental risk as low, but other councils, as moderate, but other councils have defined it as low, and yet you read their wording and it's very similar to our wording. And so why we're using the moderate word, I'm not quite sure, but I would say that the one area, so those are the 3 points, but the comment I'd make is that climate change, I suspect Tauranga does have a more moderate risk. Now, I might not agree with that, but I think the perception out there would be take a bit more risk because, and again, it comes back to the wording that we have, which I have a problem with, which is regarding the, if I just quote it, I've lost my page now, but it was around the, for environment and climate change, saying reversibility of it. And I mean, the argument is you can't reverse a lot of this stuff. Like you can mop up an oil leak, but you can't sort of reverse it necessarily. Over time, it will change things and it will heal. Same with greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm very loath to sort of see something like reversibility as something which is built into the risk profile. We need to sort of figure out, like, if it's that, then we can't, we have to change our transport plan immediately because our transport plan is causing irreversible harm to the natural environment. And, so why would we say that that's acceptable? It's a moderate risk. Well, it's a high risk. It's a known risk. It's more than a risk. It's just happening daily. And so I don't think that's the right parameter to measure it by.
Okay, if I take the 2 points that you addressed to us first, and if I take them in reverse order, if I can. In terms of why we use the term moderate and other councils use the term low, all councils have their own risk framework, and our particular risk framework, the definitions within that, both in terms of likelihood and consequence, and the work that we did with yourselves in terms of ascertaining where you were at for each of the scenarios, drove the outcome of moderate. And what we tried to do when we put the wording together for each of the risk appetite statements was to build in enough nuance so that there was some movement within. So we recognise that the preliminary benchmarks are quite hard sort of lines, and a lot of these issues are much more subtle. So we tried to build that in with the draft statements. In terms of the separation of climate change and environmental, the current risk framework doesn't have that separation within it, and it's certainly something which we are conscious of as we move forward. We have the risk policy later on the agenda, and the piece of work to follow the review of the risk policy would be to review the risk framework, and we are consciously thinking as we go into that whether or not we do need to have that separation.
Follow-up comment. I would strongly urge our council to separate out those because climate change is a multifaceted thing, which is economic, social, and environmental risk. The environmental risk is not as great, you could argue, as the social risk, and some would probably argue the economic risk is the biggest of all, but it's certainly, I don't think it should be lumped in with environmental.
Okay, I'm going to attempt to land this plane with the wings straight and level, but before I do so, you've heard the views from around the table, and from an implementation perspective, what comfort can you give members around some of the concerns that they've had around us being a little bit too accommodating in terms of our risk, in terms of the statements and what that looks like in practice?
Kia ora, thank you. I just wanted to draw your attention to page 29 in Stella of the Risk Appetite Report, because the words for 29, because the words for, and I think this is where we're sitting with environmental, and what I want to suggest is that within the software that we use, it's a blunt instrument. So you've got, and it is. The comfort that we have as staff is when we start to look at the words, this is what staff are going to use because this will be in the risk framework when they start to consider the projects and activities of council work. So it gives them some guidance as to what they should be focusing on. And any concerns then start to get escalated. In terms of comfort and in reporting, we can most certainly bring the standard report that we bring every quarter, plus those that are falling outside of appetite as a preliminary appetite, so that you can see and test the nuance within the words, the nuance within the risks themselves, because they don't stay static, and then have a conversation about what needs to happen. It may be that you choose, well, actually, we've got our setting not quite right here in terms of our appetite. That needs to change. If the words change substantially, but you're still sitting with low or moderate, then we need to do, we will need to change things. And that's okay. We can sit down, we can either workshop or have another conversation. But the reporting is key, understanding that this is preliminary, that we've got 12 months of work and effort to ensure that we're reporting what you want to see, that we understand the impacts of these within the risks that are currently captured, and that any new risk is escalated appropriately. And further to the point, that once the risk policy has been endorsed, we then start to look at the risk framework, and that framework has the risk categories, and quite rightly pointed out that climate change is important.
Okay, we have a series of recommendations on page 23. Is somebody prepared to move those recommendations as, yes, you can absolutely raise another question, Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. So just Tauranga City Council, what's the definition? Is that us? Is that TCC staff? So when the recommendation says the reporting cycle of Tauranga City Council's risk, is that elected members, mayor and councillors? Is that everybody in this organisation? Who owns that?
That is the risks to the organisation. I don't think we've had a situation where elected members have raised a risk with us for inclusion in the register. So primarily at the moment, that is risks raised by staff and managed through our corporate risk management system.
And so we know that we've had a risk appetite that staff use, and this is new that elected members are agreeing a risk appetite. So is this going to be an elected mayor and elected members' risk appetite that the CE, through the CE, becomes the risk appetite for the whole of Tauranga City Council?
Yes.
I'm just through all the reports and policies today. I'm very confused with our use of terms, and we really need some consistency on who's owning this and how we do it. The other question, Chair, is we've got in the risk policy, we're decreasing the regularity of when division heads report. They're quarterly, and it says they're now going to report at a time appropriately. When we're talking about, something differently than that, then, so to me, if we, again, to my point earlier, that we don't want to just hear about the odd ones, we want to hear about the ones that you're assessing against this draft or appetite. So I just want to make sure that we're not missing it, dropping things off because they're just standard. It's just standard reporting, or the reporting's not been done often enough. So we'll either change it down there or we'll talk about it here. What's your view?
I can address it here as it's relevant to the report that's in front of us. We made that change in the policy to allow for the fact that some of our risks on the register are very, very slow burn risks. and reporting on them on a quarterly basis, there is just no change. It just puts a burden on those staff that own those risks every quarter to report on something that is very, very slow moving. So where a risk is out of appetite, we would expect that to be still within an exception report that we would present on a quarterly basis, even if it was a slow burn risk.
And sorry, it's in the later report, but slow burn, if you're doing your quarterly risk analysis and you know that's slow burn and you just say no change, is the risk of not having to do that higher than just taking that 2 seconds to write no change on the report? If you're just knowing that you're looking at it every quarter or every 6 months, I don't know what the cycle should be, but to me, and certainly in the next 12 months, I would want that regularity.
Yep. Okay, so we can say that point on board. Yep.
And I know there's a discipline to policy review and risk review, but I think the guidance is right there that, yeah, we want to see it often and early, but the full diligence process for a long, slow burn risk that has no change doesn't need the full treatment. But yeah, anyone prepared to move on page 23? Moved by the Mayor. Is there a seconder for those resolutions? Seconded by myself. I will go to discussion. Mayor, do you have anything to say on it as mover?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you for this. Look, I think this is new. It is a starting point, and I'm comfortable in that looking at it in that way that this is a good place to start. I think the key, as I've said before, is as we go forward, it would be really good to test this and have some different scenarios and different options in some of these reports where we can see what low or moderate or high risk actually looks like, and so that we can make those conscious decisions going forward. And I think that will just embed whether we are at the right place or not, because I think that's really the key. You can have all the writing you like, but it's in those actual decisions and when the rubber hits the road that we'll know whether we're sitting where the elected members are comfortable. So I think it's a really good starting point, and thank you for all the work so far.
I'll speak to it as seconder now. My view is that we need to land this today it is a work in progress, and it is preliminary, and it is a suck and see, and I acknowledge the concerns about perhaps we don't have a low enough appetite for risk, particularly in environmental, and I think there are some new nuances that we need to look at over the next 12 months. My view is that over those 12 months we will get to a place of greater comfort together, and I think that we do need to adopt this today so that we can get it into the system and get the system working. I'm reminded of the quote, "Don't let perfection be the enemy of the good," or another way I've heard it characterised recently, which may relate to Tauranga City Council, "Don't let perfection get in the way of progress." But that being said, I'm confident in the people around this table and our staff table that we will be able to deal with risks as they arise in the appropriate way through regular reporting. That may not satisfy everybody's concerns, I do acknowledge that, but I think we need to land something today and then work on it over the next 12 months. Any other speakers? Can I just go to the committee first and then to yourself, Councillor Rosebean? Yep. Speaks from the committee, Councillor Schooler.
Yes, I think I endorse those comments, and I think I think we've heard that we are open to being agile about this. We want it to work. We want this to be adding value, and I think I'm happy myself to work with staff to see how we can make sure that does work. And I think in terms of all of those situations, it's really hard to be talking risk when you've got a, serious harm for the environment or for death on one end, and whether you trip up in a, because you put a cable across the floor because your projector wasn't working, so you brought a new screen in. So those, I think it's, so I just want to make sure we're bringing those back to the table so we can talk about those in an open environment.
Further speakers? Arohario Murray.
Kia ora, thank you. And I'm keen to see this move as well. And the way that I see it being able to move is if that risk appetite was brought down to low for the environment. And I just make that statement because, yes, they are words. They are very clear in there. But they're also a starting point. So if we are starting off at moderate, then the words are there, and it's hardest to shift down or change that word if that's the starting point. If we start at low, then it's up to the staff and us to prove that it should be going up to the moderate level. So I think that's my point that I'm making. Happy to see this go forward, but if the risk appetite for environment remains at moderate, then you'll see it in my vote. So kia ora.
Would you like to move an amendment that under environmental, that moderate risk appetite is replaced with low risk appetite?
Yes.
Do we have a seconder for that amendment? Seconded by Deputy Mayor Jen Schooler. Okay, would you like to speak to it again now that we're at amendment, or you've said you're...
I feel like I've made all the comments necessary, but happy for this to move forward and continue on. It's just that low risk for environment as the starting point, with after 12 months, if it should be moved up to moderate, then that's where we go.
Deputy Mayor.
And I think I would, I do think going from moderate down to low is harder than low up to moderate, and I think we are going to take the 12 months to say what does low mean, and on environment we do probably there's probably more serious cases that we can be seeing that we do need to be thinking about a low risk rating on that. And I think we are things like we look at our financial systems, and we know they're not perfect. We know we've still got ozone. We know we've still got spreadsheets that we actually have $500 million worth of projects sitting in, and we still call that we sort of need to be careful about that and risk averse on and making sure we've got data security. So I think I'm being persuaded that yes, I would like to see that environment going down to low.
Any further speakers? Mayor Mahe.
I don't support the amendment, and purely from this was a survey, and it went through all elected members, and from that we got a result which is reflected in all those statements today. So I think this really is a personal opinion, not the sum of the group. We haven't said we're changing any of the others, and again all those others came from a survey between those elected member groups. So that's my reasoning for not supporting it. It's not that I disagree. I just think that we're getting into a point of where we're trying to put our personal views to something rather than the process that we've got here.
Okay, and I'll speak to it finally. I'm going to avoid given that we're a committee of 4, I'm going to avoid that one. Look, for me, I think the main thing is I think they're nearly there, whether it's low or moderate on this particular one, but I think the important thing today is that we land it and that we have a risk appetite and that we work for the next 12 months to get it more perfect. That's the important. I respect the views around the table, but I think that's the task we need to land today. So I'll now put the amendment. All those in favour, please say aye.
What's the amendment?
The amendment is that we move environmental from moderate risk appetite, low tolerance. Yeah. It's just referred to as environmental, yeah, to low risk appetite. Sorry about that. Be moved from moderate to low risk appetite. Yep. I will now put the amendment. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Those against. That is carried. Now we're back to the substantive. Councillor Roseboom, do you wish to give your view before we vote?
Thank you for your indulgence, Chair. I was just going to comment that the council is predominantly an infrastructure entity, so everything that we do build, make, involves us dealing with the environment, pipes in the ground, roads on top of the ground, parks, play centres. So having a moderate risk to environmental issues, although everyone wants no damage to the environment, there's a cost implication between moving from a moderate to a low, and until we as a body better understand the cost implications and the cost to our ratepayers from moving from moderate to low, I would have voted against this, but is to stay moderate for the moment, but monitor clearly in the next 12 months to see the cost to the ratepayer.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Right of reply, Mayor, on the substantive. Do you wish to exercise your right of reply? No. Okay, I'll now put the recommendations with the amendment which is carried in total. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? No, that is carried. Thank you. Let's now move on in our agenda to 9.4, which is the risk management policy, which I believe is on page 44 of our agenda for those following at home. And speaking to the policy, we've got our two Chris's and Sharon. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you. So the draft risk management policy was previously brought to the committee back in May. Following discussion, there was a particular question and challenge on that draft, which we have taken away and addressed in this revised draft. So with the exception of that change, the draft presented is substantively the same as was presented in May. So I'll just ask Sharon from the policy team just to explain the changes that have been made.
All right, so I just wanted to thank Rohario for your comments in May around how we are applying Te Ao Māori principles in our policies. And so we've taken that on board and have met with our Takawanga unit for support and have incorporated our the code of conduct values in the policy. And it's also flowed into the other work that we do in our policy. So you'll see later on in our conflict of interest policy that we've addressed that in the privacy as well. So we have taken on board that challenge and have had a deeper look at how we're applying Te Ao Māori principles. And then the other main changes are around there were some definitions and clarifying council and Tauranga City Council, the committee. So hopefully the policy now is a bit clearer as to what applies to which particular group.
Questions of staff team? I know we had some questions around just consistency and definitions between the policies. Yep.
Yeah, I think just on 17.1a that the definitions of, so on page 46, that the definitions of council, TCC staff, the council, the committee, I found that they, between this policy and the other two we're looking at, we're not consistent. And I think work is the other one that pops in. And I'm comfortable to recommend that we update the definition section so to ensure we have clear definitions of the terms. But I'm not quite there that we've actually done that even across these three policies, let alone all the policies that we have. because I don't know what little council with a little c versus council with a big C, and the difference between those, and where we say council staff versus workers, where we say workers, which includes elected members, and workers, for the benefit of the doubt, already includes them, or workers plus. It's just there's definitely not clarity on those definitions across these three policies. So I'm happy that we're proving that we clarified the definitions. I don't think we're quite there yet, and I just want to make sure we are there before it's finalised.
I appreciate the comment. I think between three policies there is some slight nuances because of the scope of the policies. So it has been a challenge to make the definitions exactly the same in all of the three policies that are here today.
Surely if we have low risk on data and consistency and we want to be transparent, then we actually always know what the definition of Tauranga City Council is, or council with a small c is, or council with a big C is, or committee is, or procedure is with a big P or a little p.
And I think for guidance across the entire council organisation and agenda reports from different divisions, we've had discussions over the last few months around what is council with a big C, with a small c, what is Tauranga City Council, the organisation, what is the executive, what were the commissioners, and when referring to councils of the past, and we've had all of those sorts of discussions. And I think for guidance, Jeremy Bowes and Christine Jones have heard from us a number of times on that. So I think they've getting pretty close to understanding where we're at with that. So that may be of some help.
Can I suggest that as an action that we ask for a glossary of terms and how it, particularly in regard how it refers to all of the people associated with Tauranga City Council and the groupings thereof. Yeah. I think executive is probably the one that is the best. It's always the same, right? Yeah. It's always right, but and elected members, we get called elected members and councillors and mayor and councillors, and so yes, it's a little bit, so that would be an action, and then that then would feed into all your policies, and even if they have to be updated after we've approved them, I'm okay with that. So the other thing while I'm on the speaker is just on 23, what we spoke about before, 4A, change the review of risk registers to regularity by division. So this is ensures the risk registers are reviewed appropriately, and I just, in the 12 months that we are doing the review against our risk appetite, I would rather that probably stayed as regularly, not appropriately.
I'll just also come back to the glossary thing. That's not that's not just for the Audit and Risk Committee. That's for the council. We kind of need to land that for all of our committees and council as well, for everybody reporting to.
Yeah, so I think Jeremy's listening, or watching, so I know that he's done some work on this before, so if we can loop that back through the policy unit, that'd be great. Thank you.
Any further questions, team? I'll go to Rohario Murray, then back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Kia ora. Just really a thank you for taking on my previous feedback and then incorporating it throughout the policies that we're going to see today. And it is this report at paragraph 9, which my comment during the minutes, it says a workshop was held with the full council decision-making body, and I've just scribbled "and me" in my comments. So just noting that I was there as well. Kia ora.
Deputy Mayor Schooler.
Yeah, so just specific to the same conversation is that we've got on page 51, the scope. This policy applies to all Tauranga City Council activities and all council staff. And I just wonder if that's workers, or is that Is that contractors, volunteers, consultants, elected members?
So if you have a look at the definitions on page 52, it does say that it's current, permanent, fixed-term staff, contractors and consultants. That's what council staff is referring
And then later on, they're called workers in another policy.
to. In a different policy,
Yeah,
yes.
but let's have all policies with the same definitions, please. That's all.
Okay, team, are we ready to bring this one into land? Is somebody prepared to move the recommendations as written on page 44 of the agenda? I'm happy to move the recommendations, which are, we received the risk management policy, and that's understanding that minor changes can be made to provide some consistency there. And seconded by Deputy Mayor Schooler. Is there any further discussion? And breaching standing orders. I'm just checking that staff are comfortable if we adopt today, just using your minor drafting delegation, you're able to provide consistency between those terms. Happy to accept that. Brilliant. That's the end of the corridor from me. Any further speakers? I'll now put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. I declare that carried. Thank you. Let's now move to 9.3, going back in time to page 31, which is the review of the conflicts of interest policy as it relates to, and I'm going to get my definitions marked up now, as it relates to council staff.
Thank you. So the review of this policy was initially driven by the implementation of a digital tool to manage interest declarations and related conflict management plans for staff. So we took that as an opportunity to look for areas that we could improve the policy rather than just update it to reflect the digital tool where that was needed. So what that's led to is us looking at the definitions, although accepting the point that has been made in discussions on the previous policy. We've included building services within the body of this policy that were previously dealt with separately, and we've strengthened other areas. For example, there's more words now around specific prohibitions for staff and one or two other areas that have been strengthened. So the draft policy is provided to this committee for your review and to advise before we take back to the executive for final approval.
Any questions on the report, the policy? Rohari or Murray?
Kia ora, thank you. I note the comments previously made around definitions. This definition I wanted just to get some more clarification around, and it's the definition around close friend on page, I think 2 of the report, 37 of the pack. Where did this wording come from? Is it standard wording from somewhere else, or is it something that we've put together? My reading of it is that when reading other terms such as family member definition, I can see such as spouse, partner, parent, sibling. It's quite definitive there, and so it gives the decision maker some guidance as to where that hard line is or the group that it's expected to include. However, under close friend, it's, for me, quite broad, has strong personal relationships, perceived to influence impartiality, and the examples are include long-term friendships. Well, what's long-term? I mean, it might be 1 year to me, but say 5 years to the mayor. And then flatmates, right, that's clear, but individuals with whom employees have shared significant personal experiences. What's that? So I think I'm just asking these questions because when you pull out the policy to make decisions, you want to be able to make some clear decisions and you know where that hard line is. Kia ora.
Thank you. I can't recall specifically whether we started with a blank definition for this or whether we did find some wording which we've adapted from elsewhere. We did go into this review trying to give as much certainty to staff as we could around this policy, but interests and whether there is a actual conflict or a potential conflict or a perceived conflict is quite a grey area a lot of the time. And actually, from experience in recent years, the reason why we included this definition is because people have sought advice from the team where they do have friends that are in particular positions where they may have been a perceived conflict and they just weren't sure. So we knew we had to include something, but it's one of those where you can't give a specific set of guide rails to say it's this or it isn't, because whether or not there's an issue that we need to have a conversation about, think about putting a management plan in place for, really does depend on each of the individual circumstances, both in terms of the nature of the relationship with the individual, with the friend, and how what they do is related to what council does.
Thank you. And again, I'm just raising this because when you come up against somebody's conflict of interest form and they're like, I don't know, do I include this or not? And you're like, well, is it a long-term relationship? It's the point of policies is really to help our staff to know what's in and what's out. And that's the point there. I think if there's any way to tighten up the wording, but then again, I should come with some solutions rather than just say problems. But I'll just leave it at that comment for now, that I do think it is unclear in this point here. Kia ora.
Deputy Mayor.
I just thinking about that, are we, because you read that more widely than I read it, and I was just suddenly thinking that a person you've shared a important experience with. I think those were the words that you read out, and I'm thinking, Flip, if you jump out of a plane, then the guy or the lady that you're holding on to, that's holding onto your parachute, you could say is therefore a close, is a close, whatever the term is. So I think and maybe there is something there that says that if in doubt, please talk to somebody about to determine it, so that it's something that we are suggesting that if we wanted to know if this is called a close friendship, then we just say to someone, is that the term, rather than try to be a be all and end all and therefore make it more cumbersome. Don't know. That's an offer of a solution.
Yeah, just on that, because I know in past experience, elected members have sought advice as to whether they have conflicts on things or not around our table. And there's, often, we can get our learned friend in-house to provide some advice on that. But is there somebody designated or within the organisation to be able to provide advice? Thank you, Chris.
Okay. Excellent.
Is that clear in the policy? By title? There is certainly more clarity around, as what goes alongside the policy is lots of information that's, for example, on the staff intranet and other material that we provide, which makes clear that if staff do have any questions at all, they can either talk to myself or a member of the team or their people leader.
Yeah, through the chair, I'd just confirm that if there's any doubt or any advice sought, there's an escalation process which ultimately gets referred to Chris to provide a degree of independent, objective advice on.
Thank you, Chair. So can I just ask, introducing the new online portal, which has created a need for this, has it made a difference? Has it added value? Has it been a cost-effective introduction for the Tauranga?
So the portal is an extension of the enterprise risk management software. So it's just a part of that software solution which is already in place. What we have done is utilise that to be the depository for the information. At this stage, we have just sought the first of the senior leaders' regular 6 monthly declarations, utilising that portal for the first time. And the senior leaders are just completing that process now. So we're going to utilise that opportunity to speak with them to understand how they found the experience, make any tweaks necessary, and then we'll roll it out as the solution for the wider organisation to use after Christmas.
So it's on SAP?
No, it's on CAM's Risk Connect.
Okay, so later in another, well, somewhere we've said we're calling it something else, used to be called CAMS. Is that, but it's, yeah. So is it, it's the same? By the system?
Yeah, the company that owns the software has rebranded, but it's the same software.
Oh, that's great. We thought we'd migrated to a new software. Or at least I did. That's brilliant. Thank you. Any further questions, team? Yep. While you're searching for it, Deputy Mayor, I think the guidance, of course, is if there's any doubt, declare it. I don't want to sound like one of those videos on entry to New Zealand, but that's the rule, isn't it?
So just, sorry, I'm being very particular today about naming. So on page, on 5.211 in the table on page 33, add a section about when the council is the applicant. Who's the council then?
So that is the organisation. That's to cover off where one part of the organisation may be making an application through an internal process, such as building control.
Okay, and then on, go away there, then on the next thing, add a note on a senior worker now. So who's a senior worker? And then tool it down, it's just a worker.
Yeah, that's the senior leadership group, so Tier 3 managers and above.
So can you see why I get confused when I don't know who you people are?
Somebody prepared to move the recommendations on page 31. I'm happy to move. Seconded by Rohario Murray. No, I just want to thank the team, not just this policy, but all the others. I know what a policy review process looks like, and it's long, and it takes a long time before it pops up here. So thank you for that. Any other discussion around the table? No, and I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare that carried. Right, let's move now to page 59 of the agenda, which is the privacy policy. As a former deputy privacy officer in an organisation, this was good to read. So yes, would you like to briefly introduce it, and then we can go to questions?
Morning all. I'll say a few words to introduce it, then leave it to my sparring partners to get into the detail. We're bringing to you a privacy policy for endorsement. There is already a privacy breach management procedure, so you might ask, why this? Well, simply the procedure is reactive in nature, guides how we as an organisation respond to privacy breaches. This proposed privacy policy is proactive, and it would set clear expectations for handling personal information, outlines roles and responsibilities, and commits the organisation to annual training. So in our submission, it's a good thing to have. Together, the privacy policy and the procedure would give that comprehensive approach to privacy management and reduce risk and build trust in the community, which we all know are good things. So without further ado, I can pass over to the two Sharons to get into the detail.
So I'm happy to take it as read and to offer up any questions you have.
Any questions, team? Yeah, go for it, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So we talk about a privacy officer. Is that somebody who's already in place? That's you. And is that a full-time role? Okay. And so how does it work if say I had an issue with a privacy issue, do you, through your manager, talk to Marty, who then talks to the mayor and talks to me, or what's your role in terms of how do you talk to me about a privacy breach you think I might have made? As a worker, as we're terming in these.
Kia ora. You would typically go to Māori. That would be your first port of call, and then it would come straight through to me.
But if you raise something, then it would go up the chain.
Yes, yes, definitely.
We'd speak to each other, Jen.
Well, it's just an interesting thing when we talk about, we're trying to make this, we're trying to be more transparent, we're trying to make it happen, but you don't want to put blocks in place that it's not 2 conversations, it's 6. So I'll leave that with you to think about how that might be approached, so that we're sensibly efficient about somebody who's an expert in a field that needs to talk to someone, and how we do that most efficiently.
Okay, team, are we ready to land this one as well?
There are, again, some definitions that aren't quite right that need to be made consistent, please. And when we talk about in the executive summary, a privacy breach management procedure, bracket, the procedure in little p, and 1 sentence later, procedure in big P. That sort of stuff, I think we should and that's a couple of times. We should just get it right, I think, please.
Okay, page 59, the recommendations are to receive the report and endorse the privacy policy for the executive to consider and adopt. Can I have a mover for that, please? Moved by the Mayor, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Do you wish to speak to it? Any other speakers? I'll now put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare the final policy on the agenda in the open today carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, team. We'll now move to the final piece of business in the open, which is the Lagoima and Privacy Q1 report, which is 9.6 on our agenda, which is page 70 of the agenda for those watching and listening at home. Thank you. Over to Kath Norris.
Kia ora, everyone. I'll take the report as read. As you can see, it's been a good quarter for us. The numbers have come down, which has been great for everyone. No real observable trends again. We did have 5 requests around parking, which was something that was being debated in chambers, so that's often what happens. We've done a couple of things. We've revamped our TCC website so that it's much easier to find subject Lagoimas that are published by subject, so that's looking a lot tidier. And we're working with digital and a business analyst, one around AI supporting us, and the other around getting some much better and more accurate costs to produce Lagoimas. So those are kind of the main highlights. Is there any questions?
Rahari or Murray?
Tēnā koe, thank you for the report. Just picking up on your comment about the website revamp, sounds great, and putting some of those requests up online. Have you noticed that there's been less Lagoimas coming in because of that, the release of some of those common ones that the public find interesting?
I don't know that I could prove a correlation, but it does help us, because if we've already put quite a bit of information publicly available on the website, it means that we can link requests that come in about that subject to responses that we've already provided. So it can help us with less time spent.
Any other questions? Okay, is somebody prepared to move that we receive the report, which is on page 70, moved by the Mayor, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Any discussion? No, I'd just simply say, from my perspective, it's great to see the time to respond. For the average time to respond is getting low, which is great, and of course the numbers are lower there quarter on quarter. So, yeah. Any further discussion? No. We'll now put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare that carried. There are no late items on our agenda today, and so we're going to move into public excluded. For those following at home, there are a range of issues which we'll be discussing in public excluded on page 75 and 76 of the agenda. Things like cybersecurity and our risk register and some internal audit and our health, safety and wellbeing report. Can I have a mover that we move into public excluded? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Orohari or Murray. I will now put that. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. That is carried, and we need to now